Welcome to the last Data and AI Thursday of Devtoberfest. Devtoberfest is almost over, but don't worry about it. You can still see it as TechEd, which is just around the corner. So if you don't join locally in Berlin on site, then you can also join it virtually and at least watch our developer keynote. We are very much looking forward to that and all the other small things we will be doing at TechEd. And with that, I want to hand over to Timo Elliott already, who is talking about a topic that a lot of people ask me about. Will AI take my job? And he hopefully has some answers for us. I definitely use AI a lot, obviously, for coding and stuff, but I think I'm also going to learn some things here today. So over to you, Timo.
Thank you very much, and hello everyone. So today's presentation, the idea is that we give an overview of what is happening in the world of artificial intelligence and employment. And the summary is right there in the title. AI won't take your job, but somebody using it might. There's going to be a lot of disruption about this technology. It's very powerful, but hopefully you can take that on board and change the way you work, and you'll be a beneficiary of all of these new opportunities. Now, I do have the chat open here on my screen, so I will try and keep track of that if you did want to ask any questions. And well, let's just go straight into the presentation. All right. Here's another summary. The good news is I've discovered inefficiencies. The bad news is I'm actually a cartoonist in my spare time. You can see more of my cartoons at timoelliott.com on analytics, AI, and more. AI is superhuman, and it has been for a while in various things like image recognition and speech recognition and reading comprehension and so on. And we kind of take all of that for granted. Computers are better at maths than us, for example. They have been since I was a kid. So that we've got used to this over time, computers doing things better than us. What changed is they started reasoning better than us. This has been the really big change in how we think about AI and people and employment, is that they can now do general reasoning with the latest models. And this means that they do really well on things like Mensa's intelligence test. So OpenAI O3, so this is already a while ago, scored 136 on Mensa's IQ test, better than 98% of people. They're able to bring together different concepts in something in a way that looks, in many ways, like intelligence. Hard to define what intelligence is, but whatever it is, it's clear that computers are now better at it than they're better at it now than they were before. And this translates directly to what we're going to talk about today, which is software development and coding. AI is objectively better than humans at particularly complex coding tasks. This is the scoreboard for the latest ICPC World Finals. They're billed as the Olympics of algorithmic programming. So teams of 3 students go and tackle the most difficult questions out there with a time limit. The winning team, I think they managed to get their solved 11 problems with only a few minutes to spare. OpenAI and Google both took on this task within the same time limits, using their general reasoning models. So actually not coding models, but just O5 deep reasoning model, for example, and they scored 12 out of 12, better than any of the human participants. So this is clear that they can now code extremely well, at least in those very specialized coding competition formats. And that's obviously very different from the real world. And that's one of the things that gives us hope as humans in this area. So I'm old enough to remember when the big chess masters were beaten by Deep Blue, when computers got better than us at chess. At the time, that was considered a test of intelligence. Only humans surely would be able to play chess at such a high level. Deep Blue showed us that was not true. And of course, we redefined our notion of what intelligence was. And chess hasn't gone away. It's still a very popular pastime. People play now with computers, and it's just as exciting and interesting as it was before. So again, just because computers are now better at certain types of programming than us absolutely does not mean that they're going to dominate every form of development. This is an interesting way of thinking about the progress we've seen in the sector. The length of tasks that AI can do autonomously has been doubling every 7 months. So research, this is metr.org. They give various tasks to, they're keeping track of the different tasks and the different models and the 50% success rate. And a lot of these are to do with things that you might use in a software development environment. So generally sort of background for coding. If the pattern continues, then this is the what they expect to see over the coming years. So full work day by the end of this year, 2 to 3 year products, 2 to 3 day products next year, all the way through to 2031, and a full work year. And the launch of Claude Sonnet, for example, it apparently coded for 30 hours straight to build a copy of Slack, essentially, without any oversight, completely autonomous. So, easily almost a week's work of coding directly by an algorithm. So this is powerful stuff. It's definitely going to change the way we do things, and we have to prepare. And thank you, Vitaly, for posting a useful link there about these programmers. And we've got a question about access to the slide. The answer is I don't know, but we will make sure that that's available to you. You can eventually contact me directly if you want them. Anybody care to know who this is in the chat? Anybody recognize this fellow? There's a short delay before anybody replies, so. All right, so there we go. So they will share them in the show notes later. This, in fact, is Dario Amodei, so CEO of Anthropic. Claude, one of the top 2-3 LLM models out there. This is from an article earlier this year, I believe. He talked about a white-collar bloodbath where AI could take over from a huge number of jobs, doing the sort of thing that robots, mechanical robots did for the automobile industry, for mechanical jobs on the assembly line. So taking away jobs from people. Is that happening? Well, the statistics, honestly, are all over the place. Here, of course, we care particularly about computer science, and this is some of the headlines that are out there right now. Computer science graduates are cooked. This is a quote from a college in the US that's been teaching people in computer science. And this is some data that they're looking at. This is from, New York, Federal Reserve Bank of New York. This is the unemployment rates for different jobs. And of course, computer science has been, for the last 30, 40 years, pretty much a guarantee of employment. Now it shows that it's the number 3 highest unemployment rate behind anthropology and physics. I'm surprised that physics unemployment rate is so high. And for example, you have a much better chance of getting a job if you have studied art history. I don't know about you, but I found that a bit surprising, given the state of the world. Now, part of this is because computer science was seen as a guaranteed income. A lot of people went into computer science, even if they weren't particularly interested, or maybe they didn't have the grades. So there's maybe a sort of quality problem of the people going into computer science that might explain some of the employment rate. But it's clear it's a change to the way we perceive computer science as a guarantee of going forward. But again, the numbers are a bit all over the place. This is from The Economist. This is white-collar jobs overall as a percentage of total employment, and that's still going up. So far from being a bloodbath, it seems that white-collar employment is doing just fine. And if you break it down for unemployment rates for college graduates in general, again, still seems to be going up. Now, maybe this is just a lag in the statistics, but there are various high-profile economists on record saying that they don't think that AI will be this massive change that people are talking about, that it should be considered, quote unquote, just a technology. And we've gone through technology changes before, PCs in the 80s, internet in the 1990s, and that basically everything's going to be fine for employment, and because of all the business benefits of AI, employment will not suffer. But there is a particular area where some of the statistics seem to come together and show that there might be a problem. This is where it comes to juniors. This is Anish Raman. He's a Chief Economic Opportunity Officer at LinkedIn, former, he was on CNN, I think, as a reporter. AI is breaking the runs of the career level. So the very early jobs that people used to join a company, the grunt work, and they'd learn the ropes and they'd do the boring work that people, the more senior, didn't want to do. Those kinds of tasks are now being given um, to algorithms. My daughter is actually seeing this firsthand. She's doing her internship as part of her business studies, and when I see what she's doing, she's like collecting information from different spreadsheets and bringing it together and then doing some basic analytics. It's absolutely the sort of thing that I would expect Copilot in Excel to be able to do for you in a short period. So more statistics that breaks this down. So these are broken down by juniors versus seniors overall. Again, you can see the statistics there. It seems like people are not hiring as many juniors, and that perhaps that is because it's being reassigned to AI agents. Now, again, there's a causality problem here. We don't know if it's because of that. There's a lot of other things going on in the world economy. So it's not only necessarily due to AI. There might be other trends that are confounding this, but clearly we do think that that is having an effect. The more companies adopt AI, the more the junior level employment goes down. So again, this does seem to show that AI usage is behind those lower rates of young people getting employed. Yet another one here, they've broken it down in this case from different types of really finer grained. And you can see that the headcount for senior developers has continued going up, and mid-career too. So the conclusion of this report, and you can click the link to find out more, is that there's two sides to AI. There's automation, where it replaces the human being, or there's augmentation, where it's being used by the human to be even more productive. And if you can do the latter, that's a good guarantee of a job. It means you keep your employment, it means you can do more. I thought this was a nice quote from AWS CEO Matt Garman, saying that using AI to replace juniors was the dumbest thing he'd ever heard. These are obviously the developers of the future, and they're probably the most AI savvy. These are people that are, Gen Z is really running their lives using artificial intelligence. And so you want these people in your organization. They're going to be the change leaders. They're going to be the ones doing things in new ways. So absolutely, you should be continuing to hire juniors, at least according to Matt Garman. This is a lovely video I found. Again, the link is available. These are vibe coding kids. When my daughter was little, Microsoft had a really good Minecraft programming thing that we did together. It turns out she's really good at algorithmic thinking. And clearly now with vibe coding, kids can do so much more. With the right environment, you can let them get in front of a computer and really create some super interesting things. My daughter obviously wanted to create her own game. It was a little bit beyond what we could do with the drag and drop systems that we had available. Now, absolutely, were we to go back in time and do that again with vibe coding, I think she would have enjoyed it a lot more and probably would have been a lot more AI software development aware from that very early age. So I'm hoping that there's a dip as people try to get rid of juniors, but then they're going to realize that this generation of juniors is coming up with these vibe coding skills because they were able to do stuff. And then things will get back to normal. Will AI replace programmers? No, at least according to Bill Gates. It's a bit more nuanced than that. So AI does replace certain tasks. There's absolutely things that people should not doing, but complex systems require human qualities, creativity, intuition, and bottom line, what you'd expect. Developers need to collaborate with these tools to focus on innovation, do what the human beings do best, and let the stuff that computers do best to them. I see a question there for Yassine. For a net developer like me, which path is better, SAP BTP AI or Azure AI? The answer is probably both, but we'll touch on that in a little while. AI equals adaptation imperative. The asteroid is coming and we're all dinosaurs. I absolutely believe that whatever your job is, part of that job is now obsolete. There is something that you do on a daily basis that you should not be doing. You should be outsourcing that to an agent or an algorithm who can do it better and faster than you. But I believe there's another part of your job that is supercharged, something that you'll now be able to do 10 or 100 times better than you could before. The difference, the important part, of course, is knowing which is which. So the number one task, perhaps the number one thing you should take out of this is go find out what your new superpower is, because that is what is going to guarantee your employment for the next few years. And this is one level. This is not new. I'm the part of the generation. We were the very first generation to be able to use calculators in our exams for mathematics. And at the time, all the critics were saying, "Oh my God, you can't let students use calculators in school. Their mental arithmetic will be terrible." And you know what? They were right. My mental arithmetic is terrible, but who cares? It's really not important. The bottom line is we were able to do more advanced mathematics much faster than we would have otherwise did. So we got to a very high level very quickly, faster than previous generations. And I think that's what's going to be happening with these development tools. Everybody is just going to get more advanced faster. Another example, who can tell me what this is? Who recognizes this screenshot, this product? Again, I'm taking you back in history. I have gray hair. Anybody in the comments could tell me what this, what you see here on the screen? Oh, it looks like everybody's a bit asleep. All right. So good guess, Vitaly, Lotus 1, 2, 3. It is an old spreadsheet. It's not Lotus 1, 2, 3, though. It is the original. That embarrassing that I've forgotten the name of right now. It's the very original spreadsheet, the first one, just before Lotus 1, 2, 3. Anyway, I'll go back to that if it comes back to me. So maybe somebody in the chat, can help me remind or look it up. It's embarrassing. But the bottom line is spreadsheets obviously replaced what a lot of like clerks and accountants used to do. Did that mean that accountants went away? Absolutely not. It's superpowered accountants. There are now more accountants that are more powerful, could do more, and we're going to see the same thing with these new technologies. This is something that I'm sure you've heard about because you're all clued in, people, but Jevons Paradox is the notion that when something works better, but suddenly becomes more efficient, you actually end up using a lot more of it, not less of it. So, for example, it's used for light bulbs, right? We went from the old incandescent light bulbs that used a lot of energy to new LEDs that last longer and they're cheaper to run. So you could say, oh, well, great, now we're just going to spend less money on lighting. That is absolutely not what happened. Because light got so much cheaper, we added lights everywhere, to your sneakers, to your bike, to anywhere you might want a little bit of light, you now have that. So there's absolutely just as much light, probably more than there was before, because it's cheaper. Same thing happened in the Industrial Revolution with employment. I'm sure you all studied at school things like the flying jenny and the water frame and the spinning mule. These are all technologies that replaced manual weaving. So what happened to the weavers? Well, there was an explosion in employment in the industry. Those jobs were not quite the same jobs, right? There was a home industry where people would do the weaving in their homes. They did move to the factories, but the number of overall people employed doing that role absolutely skyrocketed over the coming years because clothes got so much cheaper. So people bought a lot more clothes. They stopped patching clothes. They stopped making their own clothes. They would buy the clothes. So there was a huge increase in overall employment. And this is honestly what we would expect to see. VisiCalc, was it VisiCalc? I think it was VisiCalc. Thank you, Marianne. Saved me from the embarrassment. All right. And it's worth mentioning that this is very human nature. It's very easy for us to see AI coming in and replacing existing jobs. What we don't see, or is hard to imagine, is how AI is going to create a whole bunch of new jobs. Those jobs will exist, we just don't know what they look like right now. We're starting to see some of them, we'll talk about that in a minute, but it's basically good news. So this is Morgan Stanley saying basically Jevons Paradox applies to our industry. Because AI coding tools make everything easier, you're going to end up with more code, right? Basically, there's a worldwide demand for code and software that up until now hasn't been worth doing it. There's a bunch of things where people would kind of like a code or a program, but it wasn't worth the cost of doing it. You see this very interesting way in that you can now create, because of vibe coding and things like that, you can create disposable code. Literally, before you had, if you're going to, a task would have to be repeatable several times in order for you to bother writing the code, right? Otherwise, you just do it once. But if code writing is so easy and you just give it to the AI to give it to you for you, then you're going to end up creating a lot of code because you can use it just to, hey, I've got this one file, it's got some data problems, I'm just going to write some code to fix those data problems. It'll only ever apply to this one file, I'll throw it away. Something you wouldn't have done before. Now completely feasible. So there's going to be a lot more code, and that, at least according to Morgan Stanley, is going to translate directly into a growing market for software. You're going to see a lot more software everywhere, and that in turn will lead to software development growing at 5% on average over a year. So again, positive news for the sector as an whole. So yeah, thank you, Douglas. Dario said in an interview a few days ago that despite having 90+% of AI generated code, he needs more developers because there is so much to do. Now, of course, Anthropic is not necessarily the average company, given the explosion in their industry and how many billions that the company is worth. But yes, I think that applies overall. So how does AI apply to software engineering? Well, it makes it much easier to generate code with these tools. Now, it's more code, but it's not necessarily always better code. So it makes it easier to generate code, but that new code might have a whole bunch of bugs and has to be reworked. So the overall net software gains are not what you might expect. So this is from, again, Morgan Stanley. So great, 30%, 40% new code in the same amount of time, but you have to end up rewriting a chunk of that or fixing more bugs than you have done in the past. So the overall productivity gains are a lot less. 15 to 20% says their study. I saw an article from Diginomica yesterday, day before, that talked about a new study by Erik Brynjolfsson with Stanford. I don't think that has been published yet, but Diginomica mentioned it, that he was mentioned in a presentation. And the real gain for AI consistence, just 11% after controlling for what they called confounding factors. But I'll tell you what, 11% productivity gain, that's pretty big. There aren't many roles in organizations where you can suddenly overnight get 11% productivity gain. And it's early days. We're still learning how to use these products. Morgan Stanley goes on to say that the problem is that why the productivity hasn't gone up even further is because what Gartner sometimes called trickle effects, that if you change one part of the system, it doesn't necessarily translate to productivity gains across the whole system. It's like if you speed up one cog in a pocket watch, it's not going to go any faster, right? There are constraints on the rest of the system. The whole thing has to be redeveloped. And that's basically what's happening now. I like this little diagram. Just shows that so the green part is, hey, people can code faster, but that's turning into other bottlenecks in the rest of the software development system. And this, of course, makes sense. And one of our jobs collectively is to figure out what the new system looks like and make sure that it's all running smoothly again. This I thought was an interesting one. So this is an opportunity to optimize what today's programmers do best. So all of the study shows that there's a massive gain in productivity from programmers if they get into a flow state. And this is a huge problem because developers find it hard to maintain that flow state. In the real world, you keep getting lots of interruptions. And every time you get interrupted, people spend ages before they can get back into a flow state and become productive again. And I think there's an opportunity here for AI that hasn't been discussed, but it's basically AI as a sort of guard bot that protects developers' state of mind, that keeps them longer in that flow spot, so that can control the environment so that they're not being interrupted by things that are not relevant for that particular moment. I don't quite know what that looks like, honestly, but it sounds like when we think about rethinking the world of work with AI, I think that's a big opportunity going forward. Another study that I thought I'd mention while I was talking about this is AI can be bad for your reputation. This is Harvard Business Review. They asked 1,000 engineers to review some Python code. They told half of them that it was created by a person. They told the other half that it was created by artificial intelligence. And guess what? It turns out that engineers are not super logical. As soon as they heard that it was created by AI assisted, then they immediately ranked it 9% lower on average, despite being exactly the same code. So right now, at least, if you admit to using AI assisted tools, then other engineers, I guess, are going to look down upon you. And unfortunately, this is a huge problem. That was far worse for female coders. So they, on average, they have 13% reduction compared to just 6% with male coders. So women who admit to using AI assistants are, others unfortunately question their fundamental abilities when it's exactly the same code. So just please, everybody out there, just get over this. I'm I'm personally embarrassed. So, because until my generation at school, um, computers and computer programming was one of the was fairly equal industry. The participation of women in the computer industry was highest when I was a teenager, and it has gone down, and never since then has never got back, and the trend is not going the right way. So this is absolutely something we have to fix. I think the problem went wrong in the 1980s with PCs that were sold as gaming devices, and for whatever reason, young boys are more into gaming than young women are, at least certain types of games that were available then. And so that association between computers and sort of young boy behavior is something that has affected negatively the industry to this day. So I really hope that one day we'll get over the bro culture, and we can get back to the way the situation was, where it was appreciated that this is a professional discipline where women should absolutely have their place. So Vitaly talking about the rise of vibe code cleanup specialists. So absolutely, we'll touch on this again in a minute, but there are new jobs being created. So that loop we just saw, yes, there's new ways of working and new jobs, and that's exactly what we're talking about here today. And we've got a question here from Peter. Can you touch on the MIT report stating that 95% of AI pilot projects do not provide any measurable value? So first, the study is controversial. There are people that didn't think it was handled very well. But the bigger point is absolutely true, that it's never been easier to do a prototype using generative AI. It's amazingly flexible technology. You can grab some data on the fly and build something just really fast and really impressive. But going into production has never been harder, because large language models give you a different answer every time. They have a tendency of lying, have these hallucination problems. Putting in place the guardrails to fix all of that is not trivial. It's really hard. And so that's the fundamental reason that we see these big failure rates. Now, I think, to be fair, some of that is just the learning experience. It's so early on that people were learning things. So I don't think that the 95 failure rate is fair. I think the company's got other benefits other than going production, through learning what works, what didn't work, understanding why it's hard, and so on. But it's absolutely something that I think, so just SAP pitch, I believe that this is one of the biggest values where SAP can help, because we're providing AI directly inside the existing applications. We know the business processes, we know who's using it, we know where to get the right data, we understand the guardrails. And so we can provide huge amounts of AI value directly where people are already working. And people might not even know that they're using AI. The best AI is just AI that works, that's invisible, that you don't think about it. So I think that's a big opportunity for SAP going forward, and therefore the entire ecosystem. All right, here on screen, this is a fun one. So this is a report, again, from Meter, METR, that looked at people using these coding tools, and they asked a different bunch of people how much they thought it would speed up coding. So developers themselves, they thought it would speed up 22, 23% before they did the study. Then they actually used the tools. After using the tools, they decided that it was only speeding up 20% their development. Then, but Meta actually tested compared to a control group of developers not using AI-assisted tools and just solving the code themselves. And guess what? It turned out that they were 19% faster. So the baseline there, 0, is actually what people not using coding tools were using. And it turned out that people using coding tools were actually slower, and they didn't realize they were slower. There was a massive gap in perception. So people think that the AI is helping them, but is it really? Again, I think this was to get to production code actually working. So with some of the recoding that had to be done afterwards. So we do have to take into account these kinds of delusions. It applies to executives as well, is a lovely headline from Harvard Business Review. Executives who use Gen AI made worse predictions. And this is the sycophancy problem, is that you have an idea and ChatGPT, by default, out of the box, will say, that's fantastic. Or I saw a meme the other day, the stupidest people in the world right now are being told by ChatGPT that their ideas are amazing. This is probably a problem for society. But executives in particular, they would like chat with ChatGPT, and they would feel smarter and more confident in their decisions, even when those decisions were completely wrong. Again, this is something I will have to watch out for as we start using these AI tools. Question from Douglas there. Maybe it was people using and not using the tools, not at the same knowledge level. I think that was about the study we just saw. You'd have to go and look at the details, but I think that the high level thing is, I think, true, is that using these tools, our perception of how much it helps us is dubious, and we have to double check those assumptions. It's not a clean positive necessarily. All right, so the good news, AI jobs, broadly defined, are exploding. So anything to do with AI is incredibly popular. As you know, the US has poured something like $200 billion into AI infrastructure over just this year. And the reason they're doing that is they think that it turns into amazing business benefits over long term. And to get those business benefits, they're going to need people who know how to use AI. And hopefully that is going to be all of us. So a new job here, AI integrator. This is a study for people posting on AI integration jobs. So this is connecting systems to get the right data, the right LLM, and so on. Makes a lot of sense. SAP, of course, we're hiring a lot of these people, or converting existing developers into these kinds of roles. It's exactly what we need to do behind the scenes to provide that AI that comes out of the box. This is a headline for a post by a friend of mine, an ex-colleague, Professor Marek Kowalkiewicz. I'm sorry, I struggle with his name. So he's a professor in Brisbane in Australia, and he wrote a book on AI called Working with Digital Minions. But here's how he puts it. Half your job was never your job. If you take a step back, what is it that you are really getting paid for? What is your role? And he gives some examples here. So people don't hire lawyers to do contracts. Not really. At the end of the day, what they want from the lawyer is to protect them from catastrophic mistakes and make sure they don't go to jail. So there's this notion of there's a job to be done. Clayton Christensen, a Harvard Business School professor. You don't get paid for your tasks, you get paid for the outcomes. So you need to concentrate on what the outcomes that you're bringing are, and then figure out how AI can do that faster. So you are more likely to be employed or promoted if you can use AI to do that outcome faster than you could before. Okay, getting to coding, BCG puts it down to these three different eras of AI in software development. Um, the tool-based adoption, workflow transformation, and agent-led orchestration. So tool-based adoption, this is where we are now mostly. This is where people are using these AI assistants. And this is a lot of bottom-up. People found it super easy to use these. Like every developer community has gone, wow, you know, we need to use these tools. And they've gone to their management to say, hey, we'd like to do this. Then there's workflow transformation. That's redefining that diagram we saw earlier. And then the next level is agent-led orchestration. So BCG handily breaks that down into what changes for tasks, talent, and teams at every level. And the interesting ones, I think, are we're in column 1 and moving to column 2, where we're like individuals are now pretty good at using these tools to code faster. Now we need to adapt the system and rethink the number of roles we have in different places. And then the third column is the era we're moving to. And this is going to be a bigger disruption. This is where the agents really start doing the work and our role becomes orchestrating those agents. A lot of traditional coding, at least in the SAP environments with ABAP and so on, is business processes. It's like this step, then this step, then this step, complex branching, and so on. The definition of process is changing. Instead of a fixed set of steps, we can look forward to a future where we define the outcome. What is it that we're trying to achieve by this process? And then we give the AI agents access to a bunch of tools, and we just say, hey, go optimize that outcome. So instead of saying, you know, here's what we need to do to get a sustainability report, we say, here's the framework, here's what we need at the end of the day, go find the data. And then we give it a bunch of agents that can look up where to go and find that for it. And so this is fundamentally going to change how we think about programming. Programming will become orchestration over time. Now, how that happens, I really don't know the details, but it's something that we have to be aware of and start adjusting to right now. At the very bare minimum, you absolutely need to understand how AI agents and AI orchestration fits in with traditional development with things like ABAP. So, of course, we'd like to help to the extent we have. This is not a presentation about SAP at all, but SAP Joule for developers obviously is a tool to help with the tool-based adoption. Use AI to accelerate things like ABAP, CAP, and so on. And then the other aspect of an SAP build, so we've got build code. So now you can do some vibe coding within SAP products. You can say, hey, I want this kind of application with this kind of interface. And SAP build code will give you the structures and the test data and the code, and then you can adjust that. Obviously, there are much more detailed sessions and all of that, so I won't go into more. But the other aspect is, so that's one aspect, that's like developing and using AI for developing. But now we've got AI Foundation, and this is where SAP has been investing massively over the last year, basically, providing a workbench for AI use cases. So we have amazing business experts across SAP who understand procurement with Ariba, or travel and expense in Concur, or finance in SAP ERP Cloud. And so we just need to make it as easy as possible for those experts and the people that did the traditional process building, make it as easy as possible for them to use AI as part of those processes. So this is the AI Foundation that we've been building. It is very sophisticated. At SAP, we can't really get wrong answers. You know, if you're doing your financial close, it can't be just like 90% correct. So all of those guardrails and hallucinations and things, we've really had to put in place a robust framework and maintenance over time. Because in a cloud world, we're doing this for customers, so that as the underlying models change, we need to make sure that our prompts are still valid. So we have to have a whole test suite to make sure those prompts are valid. As the models get updated, the prompt might need to change. So we've got technology that helps rewrite prompts based on the model itself. And there's the question of optimization. Like you could use ChatGPT 5.0 for almost everything. That would be slow and expensive. There's a lot of fantastic models out there. I'm French. I live in Paris. I'm a big fan of Mistral and Le Chat. So they have great models that we could use that are cheaper and really good for a particular type of use. Or I just heard a presentation from Cohere. Again, they have a great model that is really useful in business context that we are leveraging as part of that. So again, like choosing which LLM, updating the prompts, all of that is handled by the AI Foundation. We're using it for us internal use of SAP AI, but we also provide it out to our customers and partners. So absolutely go and learn about these tools, because it's absolutely going to be part of your developer future as part of the SAP ecosystem. Just to give you a quick example of the kinds of things our customers are doing. So SAP supplier balance reconciliation. This is a customer I talked to at Sapphire. And this is a typical problem in the business world. They do the financial processing. They have 20,000 different suppliers, something like that. And the problem is that the numbers in their SAP ERP system don't match the numbers in the ERP system of the supplier. They're supposed to, but real world, they don't necessarily. And so there's a very manual process you can see on the screen where they just send each other emails and try and figure out where the discrepancies from. And it's just very manual and very painful. So they swapped it for a set of agents that go and do the grunt work, that opens the email. It understands where the numbers are. It goes and looks through the transactions. It brings the data together in a common format. Little things like in English, you put a period before the decimal point. In French, it would be a comma. So it has to make sure it's the same formats. It actually uses an iterative AI agent format to help get the supplier's data linked to the SAP data. Goes through perhaps thousands of transactions, find out where the discrepancy is. Out of the 1,000, these are the 3 where I think it's coming from. Do you agree? Sends it automatically off an email to the supplier, and so on. At the end of the day, this has been amazingly successful. Time to resolution reduced by 70%, saved 7,000 hours of work a year, increased supplier satisfaction, and they saved a bunch of money in the ticketing. So this is just a very concrete case of a real world scenario where agents are providing lots of business benefits using the AI Foundation. All right, let me stop there for a second because I've seen those questions coming in. Yes, knowledge, context. And Marianne talks about the importance of context. Absolutely, people are context machines. We understand. You see, it happens all the time in meetings. Somebody says, "Oh, gosh, cost went up 50%," and somebody said, "Oh, well, yeah, but actually that's temporary. It's because this happened, or there was a storm, or there's a new tariff, or things are always happening." And human beings are context machines. We understand that. AI is going to struggle to catch up with that. Obviously, we're trying to build some of that in. To the extent that the context exists within your SAP systems, we're using technologies like the knowledge graph to make sure that context is applied to the AI algorithm. Again, this is what makes it more robust. But yeah, it's something where humans can always add value. So when you touch on if SAP will continue, we'll work with standard process flows and then infuse AI adaptive flows. So I'll be honest with you, I am not the expert. This is not the place for a deeper dive. First, traditional process flows will absolutely not go away, I believe, because the companies want to do things the right way at scale. So absolutely, a series of logical steps makes perfect sense and will make perfect sense. AI will at least initially be applied to the fuzzier 2 ways. One is like little manual steps, like opening a PDF and extracting the values and things like that. They're very effective at that. But it's going to be like RPA, robotic process automation plus. It's just going to do some of those things faster, and you'll be able to implement those things faster using forms of vibe coding. But longer term, it's going to be applied to the cases where it was just hard to build a regular process because it was too flexible. It changed all the time. And there's just so many examples of those. So AI is fantastic for those extra use cases where the traditional processes just weren't flexible enough. So it's going to be very much complementary, I believe. And of course, we're going to make sure that we have all of the tools and the training and the skills for our developer community to allow people to do that as effectively as possible. All right, question about MCP and getting rid of Joule and using MCP instead for SAP CAP. Now, this is, I can't go into detail too much here because I'm not the expert, but B, I can tell you the official way that SAP is thinking about this going forward is, so MCP is a protocol to share data between different agents. It lacks some of the robustness that we would like for enterprise environments. So right now, our go-to strategy is to work more with the A2A protocol proposed by Google. So we were part of that launch that includes this more enterprise level robustness. That said, with MCP today, you can access with things like OData and reuse your SAP security. So we've had there are people trying to like build agents outside of the existing Joule framework. So one is, so here are my thoughts. These are my thoughts. These are not official thoughts. I think it's ultimately a bad turn. We're going back to the essential like custom coding, right? We just talked forever about the need for a clean core and doing things in a way that's easily upgradable and adjustable in the future. And this is another approach that is akin to custom code. It's not the same, but in terms of you building something that is not within the approved framework that then you will have to maintain going on. I don't think that that is the right choice for the vast majority of AI use cases. Again, where it's a big differentiator, maybe. But I believe that the SAP strategy is the right one, is that if you want to do agents with SAP functionality, the right way to do it is to use Joule as the entry point and let Joule orchestrate that effectively at scale with privacy and security and everything put in. There's a temptation to pick off like little bits of SAP functionality and understand that. I don't think it's the right long-term way to get all of the business benefits for everybody. So short term, sure, you can get some business benefits out of that. Longer term, I don't think it's the right way to do it. Again, just my opinion. I think presumably a tech ed, they'll go into this question in more detail. Okay. Back to the presentation. All right, so we're talking about agents. So agents are a little fragile. Again, these external agent frameworks are, you have to do a lot of work. You have to maintain it. Just fun little things like if you add in interesting fact, cats sleep most of their lives to your agent instructions, it will suddenly get the maths wrong, for example. So again, we believe that the right way to do this is for us to concentrate on what we do best, providing mission-critical, robust infrastructures, and we would prefer people to access that agent functionality through Joule as initial window, and then it will go off and orchestrate the right things. Now, we understand that people are going to use agents with Microsoft and Salesforce and everybody else, but it should, I think that if you're talking about the SAP world, you should. It's a bit like Business Data Cloud, same kind of idea. So yes, you can take your data out of SAP and try and put it in a data lake. It's just really hard and painful. Or you can use SAP Business Data Cloud for your SAP data, and it should just be cheaper, faster, and better. So the same sort of thing should apply to AI agents, I believe. It's going to take a long time to replace people. The edge cases are going to take way longer than anybody expects. So there's a lot of optimism about agents. I personally believe it's going to take a while. Now, obviously, we're focusing on the kinds of use cases that we're confident can be robust. So finance is a great area where we're doing a lot of this. But anything that touches on humans is going to be tricky. And I think we should be prepared to be a little disappointed, at least with agents as we go out. So, there's all these announcements right now, all these thousands of agents coming out. Again, SAP is not necessarily the furthest advanced in what people think about, but I think we're going to be the most robust. We're only going to deliver agents that actually do the agent work that they're going to need to. I'm not sure that that's true of everybody in the industry. Okay, getting more towards the end. This is a bit out of left field, but just as a general comment about what you need to do to future-proof your AI career. We spend a lot of time on the left-hand side of this chart as individuals and as an industry, and especially SAP. You know, it's very German, very logical. But at the end of the day, what humans are good at is that right-hand side. That's where we can actually add value. So just a high-level comment is spend more time on the right-hand side of that chart. This is Professor Scott Galloway, internet sort of personality podcaster. How do you AI proof your career? Well, his advice is, you might expect his advice to be to double down on AI. It's not that. It's say become a storyteller in the most general sense. Why? It's because money, in the larger sense, goes to storytellers. If you want to, whatever you want to do in your career, you want to get to the next level, you want to convince people to do things that you think are a good idea, storytelling is the way to do it. So spend some time doing that. And I saw some research from Gartner. They talk about the courses that CIOs are interested in, the skills they want to work on. CIOs are absolutely working on storytelling. That's what they know that they're lacking. And it's kind of normal. You get to your job for your technical skills, but as you go and advance your career and you want to do more and influence people and manage teams, skills, the human side of things becomes more and more important. All right, so I'm actually going to steal shamelessly from a LinkedIn post from Abnikant Singh, and I saw this Shirek Thakur send it. So this is just verbatim what he put in the post. I didn't ask for permission, but I really hope this is okay, because I just thought it was just great. It was perfect. So is it SAP still a safe career in the age of AI? Basically, yes. So first, SAP is, of course, massive in the business world. 70% of the business transactions touch an SAP system at one point. We've got a big upgrade going on as people moving to S/4HANA. Absolutely, we need developers with those skills. There's a massive shortage among all of the consulting companies and the installing companies for people that understand SAP. Probably a bigger shortage than almost any other area, apart from maybe those AI foundation model builders that are getting millions from Meta. So we don't think that consultants are getting replaced by AI, but consultants that are learning AI, who can use these cloud skills and machine learning skills, are very much in high demand. And looking forward, is that going to change? Certainly not overnight. The next decade or so is still going to be all about helping people move to the cloud, helping people integrate, use these new ways of learning. There's massive expertise that's going to be needed in order to help our customers move to the next level. So bottom line, SAP is, out of all of the development areas, SAP is probably one of the safest, where there's still going to be very strong demand if people invest in these new skills and new ways of working and be part of their way of changing rather than sort of clinging to old ways of working. All right, next steps. So knowledge, pure knowledge is less valuable. So if you're like an expert in ABAP and you're like, you know all about ABAP, well, guess what? Computers are going to be good at that kind of expertise, but applying expertise can be a superpower. This is where you get more your big advantage. The future of jobs is being created as we speak, so you get to define your own job. I mean, think about this seriously. Is that we talked about AI integrators, and in the chat there was the notion of vibe coder correctors or whatever it was called. Those jobs are being created right now. Go and find a job that you like in this new sector, because you could absolutely make it yours. Augment yourself, learn these new tools, learn how to orchestrate agents doing the work for you rather than coding yourself, and improve your human skills like collaboration, innovation, transformation, and so on. All right. Final words for the presentation. So jump in, just go ahead, just do it. There's no substitute for trying these things out for yourself. It's an area where you really have to learn by doing this. So what they call the jagged edge, where large language models in particular are super good at some things, amazingly good at some things, and amazingly bad at other things. And it's not until you try it that you realize which is which. So go try it. This is Picasso, my favorite quote ever on computing. Computers are useless. All they can do is give you answers. Of course, human beings are great at asking the right questions in the first place. And here's Einstein, another quote: "The true sign of intelligence is not knowledge, but imagination." And thankfully, imagination is something that is particularly human and will remain so for the coming years. Although we can use AI to animate Einstein so that he agrees mentally, which is kind of cute. All right, so that's it with the formal slides. Let me turn to some of these final questions here. All right, so there's a bunch of people working with MCPs, and again, great to experiment. MCP is available for Fiori and CAP and so on, so those developer environments. And Marian asks, maybe that's your opinion, but customers can still decide what they use, right? Yes. Now, I did see a post that you should probably look at. Again, I'm not the expert here, but it was something along the lines of access to the SAP system and what is authorized and not, and how is envisaged. I think at a high level, it might be true to say that these kinds of accesses are creating new ways of using the SAP system that wasn't perhaps reflected in the terms of usage, and that in the future that would maybe get reviewed. Again, I'm not the expert. This is my personal opinions, but whatever, this is going to be clearer, right? So right now it's not super clear. Like, can you do this? How do you do this? What's the best practices? All of that is being built by folks like yourselves as we speak. So let's build it together. Let's work on what developers need to get the most out of SAP in their systems, and to make sure that it's aligned with the longer term benefits for everybody involved. So, all right. If there are any other questions, you've got a couple of seconds to add them. Otherwise, I will wrap it up there, because I promised that this would take like only 30 to 40 minutes. I ended up
That's
taking the
fine.
full
I
half
told you
hour.
you have max 75. So you're
All right,
totally in time. Yeah,
but
usually
we
I would
can.
now ask you the questions, but you already answered everything, which is awesome, so that people don't have to wait for answers forever. So like really cool how you presented that and answered all the questions right away. It was very interesting. I definitely got inspired a lot. Yeah, I hope we didn't worry anyone and they just all now know what to do.
And thank you so much for everybody who participated in the chat. Great to see folks like Tammy. How you doing? If you don't follow Tammy on LinkedIn or the Boring Nerds podcast, then you really should. But anyway, yeah, great feedback, and we get to build this future together. And with that, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Timo.